from the political space. But lately we have seen a lot of interest from youthful aspirants. But do the youth exist as a voting bloc? And for the youth that have declared interest in politics, are they sayers or doers? Our conversation tonight is on the youth and politics. My guest in studio, starting from this end, Gloria Oroba. She's a youth policy analyst. And on this end is Suleiman Bashir. He is an advocate. We're going to be getting into this conversation and inviting, of course, your comments. Our SMS number is always 22422. The hashtag is Friday Night at Citizen TV Kenya at Lillian_Muli. Gloria, I'll start with you. Do the youth have what it takes to engage in the political process?
Thank you for having me. I think that there's no doubt that the change makers of this society are the youth, and they definitely have what it takes. The thing is, we need to actually put our best foot forward and don't shy away from the politics that is there. And I think as youth, one of the advantages that we have is that we have time. So we need to take advantage of that. You need to start as early as possible and just push yourself to the forefront. I think we have what it takes.
Mm-hmm. Do we have what it takes?
Absolutely, we do. Looking at especially the kind of population that makes up the youth in this country, it is normally projected that we're about 75% and above of the general population. Those are the people who are aged below, I think, 35, between 18 and 35. And that tells you that when you look at the voting bloc, the kind of people that they can really elect in the event will come out. But I think on the other part is, in as much as we have the capacity, there are various underlying factors that may not be in favor of the youth. But generally speaking, we have what it takes. We can give it a shot, and this can be a game changer for the youth of this country.
75%, those are the numbers we're talking when we talk about the youth. So why the voter apathy amongst the youth? Why the reluctance to register to vote?
You see, Lillian, when you look at a good constitution, we expect that civic education to be undertaken in a good time by the IEBC. But I think due to various reasons on the part of the commission, we end up having civic education at least about 6 or so months to the general election. And I think whenever we talk about civic education, this comes up at the time of either voter registration or during the general election. And I think these are very late timings, especially noting that we have this kind of youth that are not so much informed about their rights, they're not so educated, and maybe the kind of educational levels that we have attained may not be so much. So I think the kind of appreciation that we have made on the part of investing information in the youth has been so little, if any. So I think in my view is, when I look at the kind of voter apathy that we can see at the moment, it comes on the basis of two reasons. One, on the basis of disinformation, and on the other part is desperation on the part of the youth as a result of disinclusion in the political processes of our country. And I think with time we can see that if the youth are given an opportunity to partake in the political process of our country, the turn-up and the participation in the voter registration may be different, I think, going forward.
Is that where the gap lies, the civic education? Is this now the ripple effect in terms of the disinterest we're seeing in the youth?
I think it's one thing to talk about the timings of civic education, but then let's also look at how we are trying to target the youth. Normally, IEBC and maybe the NGO and maybe CBOs that are actually trying to be active in those spaces of civic education, they'll go out and try to reach the youth. But how? You'll see newspaper advertisements. How many youth actually buy a newspaper and read a newspaper in 2022? You'll see them trying to maybe sponsor radio advertisements, but I believe in the wrong platforms, or the targeted audience is actually not tuned into that particular timing, or like during news, during prime time. But how many youth are actually watching the news? So I would say the civic education and sensitization that IEBC should be targeting is, how do I get to the youth? Where are the youth? The youth are on TikTok. Joe Biden actually had to go on TikTok so that they can target the virgin voters. So why isn't IEBC on TikTok, for instance? If they are going to come and say to citizens that they want to use their space to advertise, why can't they take shows that are being watched by the youth as opposed to prime time, or as opposed to... So I think it's also the way with which we are trying to reach the youth. At the end of the day, if you cannot, the thing about the mountain, the mountain has to come to you, or, whatever it is that they normally say, we have to find where are the youth, where are they active, what interests them. I always imagine myself during a time like this, especially on registration. Just imagine having an IEBC caravan with all influencers that the youth follow online on trends and things, and then actually taking it to every county and saying, before you come into this forum, to this concert, to this place, can you register? those numbers will be going up. But instead, they just have tents in schools or polling stations, and they're hoping for registration.
The youth conversation, who is leading this conversation, Bashir, for the youth? How do we strengthen the voice of the youth?
If we want to get out the youth to seek for votes, we need to use the youth. You know, you ordinarily use the youth to pass the message to them. I think there was a research that talked about if you want to have any impact on the youth, engage the youth. And I think what we are having is there is lack of engagement of youth to maybe influence the youth. And I think, Lillian, another worrying trend is the fact that we have had so many youth who have registered for identification document. They have applied for identity cards. But as we speak, I remember the National Registration of Persons at some time back was talking about various thousands of national identity cards that have been locked within the offices of the DOs. You can imagine if the youth of our country are not even going to collect their national identity cards, at what point can we talk about the voter identification document? I think the identity card is everything. What is making the youth despair in everything is about the life, the opportunities, the political processes, the persuasions, giving them an opportunity to partake in their day-to-day affairs and all that. So let us give them the opportunity not only on the political aspect of it, but even income-generating activities, education opportunities. All these are the momentous issues that will influence the youth to not only procure the identity cards, but also think of voting for, taking part in the electoral process of our country.
And yet these are conversations we've had every election year. So strengthening the voice of the youth, the narrative has been peddled by recycled politicians and more seasoned politicians. Who is leading the conversation this year?
This year, I'm glad to say that we have the youth actually leading the conversation. Even if you look at the political parties, they are really struggling to appeal to the youth by putting secretary generals as youthful people, by having youth leagues and actively and intentionally having, youth aspirants. I'm aspiring for Member of Parliament in Bobasi constituency under the UDA, United Democratic Alliance. And I can tell you that right nowadays, we don't have that thing where you have veteran politicians telling you, sit down and wait, because even as we are trying to amend this election laws and things, you will see that they are trying, as much as it's being done hastily, but they're trying to include the youth. They're trying to say that, when it comes to the money that is going to be spent, in the political parties, that, they'll push for these constituencies of people, particularly youth, women, and people with disability, that the political party that has, more candidates or more seats that represent these people get more money. So what's happening is there's a realization that you can't ignore the youth anymore. And it's not just about having a youth league, but it's also about how are you intentionally putting these youthful aspirants in a position that they can actually compete fairly with the veterans.
Talking about the youthful aspirants, I'm sure you've seen those that have declared interest, some of them celebrities, others not. However, do these youthful aspirants understand what the youth of this country want in terms of the articulation of their issues, in terms of their reasoning when they speak to their constituents that are the youth? Do they understand what the youth of this nation want? You
see, Lillian, you have raised a very crucial question. When you look at the youth of our country, why do we keep having this conversation over time and over again? That tells you that there's a problem that is not going anywhere, first thing. So I think the game changer is this. Every single time, once we have 4 years down, and about, I think, 6 or so months remaining to the general election, that is when conversation about the youth pick up. That is why we can see political parties that are now conversing or bringing us issues to do with the youth at the moment. I think coming back to your question on whether we can have good leaders from the youth, I think if we look at the current parliament as constituted at the moment, together with the county assemblies, I think the youth population within our county assemblies and the parliament is quite important at the moment. We have made a good progress as a country, especially looking at the year, I think, 2017 general election, whereby we have voted in a number of good youthful leaders.
Did they deliver?
So now that's the big question. They haven't met or they haven't achieved the aspirations that they have shared with us. They haven't met the dreams that we expected on their part to maybe achieve. That has not happened. Now, the big question is, in the event we end up electing more and more youth, how far are we sure that these are the set of people who will change our lives? Lillian, what is happening is, if we look at how the youth of our country, how those youthful leaders were elected, I think they were elected on the basis of sycophancy and their relationship with certain political supremos. And I think that is where the problem starts. And I think the genesis of that problem is the costly elections that we have as a country. We may have a brilliant young mind who may be interested in vying for a certain seat so that he steers the affairs of the youth in our country. But what will happen is he must align himself with a certain political supremo for him or her to get elected. And when that person gets elected, the only vision that you have is to play the cards of that political supremo. You do not remember the youth interest at heart.
I beg to differ about having not achieved. We have over 30 members of parliament who are elected under the youth bracket, the likes of Nixon Korir, Ndindi Nyoro. I mean, most people maybe only know Babu Owino because he's more outspoken, but we have people who've actually delivered. I mean, when you look at Langata constituency, some stuff has been done. We have the likes of Fatuma Gedi who are in there. You can't say that they haven't really, done much in terms of achieving something. But maybe what is expected of the youth is perhaps how they deliver the message on what they have achieved. I think that's what's lacking, because you have youthful politicians who are elected, who the pressure was so high to deliver, but actually don't have the sensitization in terms of how do you now come back to the electorate and say, by the way, while these veteran politicians were making noise, this is what I have been doing. So in terms of achievement, I think we have a few here and there that have done something. But what I would say is, going forward, with having more than a little bit over 30 elected leaders who are under the youth bracket, I am very hopeful that in 2022, this year, we are going to have double that amount. And we are going to have more leaders who are actually not coming out because they're celebrities. I know we have radio personalities that have come out, the likes of Jalango and who. But, this time I think there's a bit more expectation from the electorate. It's not about your popularity. It's not about that you are known, for trending certain topics or whatever. But the electorate is now actually asking, you're running for Senate, yeah? You say that you are, because you are known or you have a following, but really, what is your manifesto? And I think what we need and this is literally down to pragmatics, you need a workshop where, first of all, the youth are sensitized. What are the regulations before you get on the ballot? Because most of these people don't know that. And once you are actually selling your agenda, what is your agenda? And can you achieve it within as MCA or as an MP, as whatever?
Talking about sensitization, I see a lot of them declaring interest and saying that they're going to run as independent candidates. Your thoughts on that?
The whole thing about independent candidates, and I feel bad about this, it's because we are shying away from getting into that party politics and fighting it out in the party politics.
And as we close, and that we'll borrow from that point, but as we close, the mentoring aspect, talking about them shying away from being members of political parties because of the competition that lies therein, but talking about the old guard, they're scrambling for the same seats, to retain the same seats that the youth are going for. So in terms of the mentoring aspect, who is mentoring these youthful aspirants since they're eyeing the same seats that their predecessors want to retain?
You see, Lillian,
closing.
The reason as to why we are having political heavyweights who have served in various, leadership positions over time, who may be interested in vying against the youth for certain dockets, tells us one thing, that those youthful politicians that we have elected, they did not achieve those particular goals that they have set with us. The only ones that we can see on the television, and I think political podiums, are the ones who are propagating political propagandas. Truly speaking, we do not have any good example of youth who today we can say that he or she has done 1, 2, 3 issues. The same problems that were bedeviling the youth over time are the same problems that they're still grappling with. I think the reason as to why the youth of our country at the moment are now even thinking of voting for all politicians, we may have old guards who are performing better than these young leaders. So I think let us call it what it is. It is high time that we either elect good leaders or who are especially within the youthful age bracket. And I think, Lillian, the other issue that I've actually underscored, the reason as to why we have youthful politicians who are interested in vying for political seats, especially under the independent party ticket, is that they have read what is happening. They have read the message of the youth, that in the event you are thinking of maybe aligning yourself with a certain political supremo, all you may be committed to in the next 5 years is to sing the tunes of that particular leader. I think it is high time we do this, that as youth of our country, let us audit the kind of leaders we have. We again have another opportunity come August this year. And this is the time to look at their goals, their targets, and see we can vote for them on the basis of what, not just on the basis of their political affiliations. Let us see their agendas. Let us audit them. In the event we have any old guard who may be better than the youth, why not? We are all we are interested in is to safeguard our interest as a youth.
On mentorship, I want to point out something that people don't understand. Politics is a career. If you're not developing in that career, what's going to happen, for instance, is my competitor, when I was in class 3, he was the member of parliament in my constituency. Now he's still vying for the same seat that I'm vying for. That means when you ask yourself, has that person actually developed in their career enough so that they can come back and mentor the youth? So we lack mentorship because most of the youth that get in decide to stay in power, and they think it's just about having power and not actually progressing within that career. So I would urge for the veteran politicians to actually question, are they actually developing within their political career, or are they waiting and staying in the same position to compete with the youth 20, 30, 40 years? As I said, when I was in class 3, my competitor was the member of parliament of my constituency. And right now, I'm competing with the same guy who's around 70 years old. So the mentorship there, who is going to mentor who?
So, Lillian, my message is that in as much as we think of voting for them, let us not just look at the age factor. Let us be considerate of who will change our lives.
Many thanks for your thoughts. Do the youth have what it takes to engage in the political process? You've had from our youthful analysts in studio this evening. I've been speaking to Gloria Oroba. She's a youth policy analyst, and Suleiman Bashir, who is an advocate. We'd like to get your thoughts on this conversation. Many thanks for watching. We'll be right back.